in the beginning. Before the church, before the law, before the fall. Before everything there was God. Our identity, our story, even our purpose. Everything has to start somewhere. And in the beginning, God.
My understanding of God, impacts how I do my job. It impacts, how I relate to my wife, how I relate to my kids. It impacts how I relate to my neighbor. It has an impact on everything. And I just believe that in our society that is so biblically illiterate that and I don't mean that to be derogatory, I mean that just as a fact, we don't have a lot of biblical knowledge. We have some information, but not a lot of knowledge. And I'm hoping that this might help fill that need. And there's a hunger that I'm seeing in the life, and I know you've seen it as well, in the life of our church. And I think it's across the board. People want more than fluff. They want more than a devotional thought, and so what this is intended to be is a short, not devotion. This is a short discipleship nugget. This is something, not a cream to kind of rub on to make you feel better. This is a nugget of truth that I hope and pray you can chew on for the rest of the day. And we're going to spend a little bit of time in the book of Genesis. And in the opening book of our Bible, oftentimes we open it and we ask the wrong questions. I've talked with people, I have argued with people, I have listened to people who want to go to Genesis and they want to ask questions like this. Is it evolution or creationism? Where do we land? Is there several million years between verse 1 and verse 2? Was it really literal days, like 24-hour days? Did God create the world in 7 24-hour periods, or is that symbolic? I mean, after all, the Bible says a day is like 1,000 years, right? To God, He stands outside of time. And here's the genuine answer to those to some of that. It's the wrong question. That Moses was the author of Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, the Pentateuch. The basis of the law. The Torah, what the Hebrew people based and lived their lives on was the foundation with these 5 books. Well, why did he do that? Why did he write that? Well, you have to remember, where did Moses step into history? He wasn't there at the beginning of Genesis. He was there in the middle of Egypt, right? For 300 years, the people of Israel, well, they weren't Israel then, the people of God, the Hebrew people, were slaves in Egypt. They were illiterate. They did what they were told. And by illiterate, I don't mean stupid. We sometimes equate those two. That's not what I mean at all. They did not read and write. Let's put it that way. Or at least the common people didn't. They had, after 300 years, they had no idea. They had lost sight of who their God was. They had heard a few stories, but they didn't really know who their God was. They were a storytelling society. They were a verbal society. That's how they understood their history. They were told stories. They were placed and they were about to go into a land that had multiple gods. They worshiped everything. Egypt did the same. They had all kinds of gods. But one of the things that God wanted to make sure of as they were going into the promised land was to give them a firm foundation. This is who I am. And as a result, this is who you are. It is told to them in story fashion. Now, we hear the word story and we equate that with made up fiction we tell our kids. No, that's not what I mean at all. By story, I mean it was told in a narrative fashion, and so it was told in a way that they would understand it.
The beginning matters. Knowing who God is and what He's done, knowing where we come from, helps us understand where He is leading us.